You are unmuted.
That will be the next exhibit. Exhibit 618. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Publish it for the jury.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Whitman, what's up on the screen now, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 618?
It is, yes.
And if you could, again, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what are we looking at in Exhibit 618?
Okay, so the left side of the table is the entire URL that was recovered from the browser state record. What I've done is broken it down into each of its individual components and explained what each of those components means. So the very first row is google.com/search. That just tells the browser that we're going to the Google website and that we want to run a search. The second part, the Q equals, is telling the browser what the query term is. So the query term here is host long to dying cold. The little plus symbols in between is in place of a space because spaces can't be part of a URL. Next, we have the input encoding and the output encoding. Just explains what kind of characters to use and what language to use when you're accepting the search query and giving it back to the user. And finally, the important part is the and client equals Safari. This is something that just tells Google that this query is being done using the Safari client. Again, if I was to use Safari and just visit the Google web page and type that in, or type a search in, that part of the string wouldn't be there. That's only there because I used the Safari search bar as part of the Safari application to do that search.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that phone. Now, sir, with reference to that, what, if any, relationship does that have to the information you were discussing just prior to the break?
Again, that confirms that this search was conducted via the Safari search bar feature that's part of the Safari browser application, the same one that caused the records to be recorded in the plist.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
Yes.
You another document. Do you recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize that?
This is the live records from the browser state.db database.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm all to seek to introduce the witness. No objection.
All right, thank you. Exhibit 619.
May I return to the witness?
Thank you.
May I publish that for the jury as well, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Mr. Whitman, do you recognize what's up on the screen now is what you have before you as Exhibit 619?
I do, yes.
Now, turning back to the browser DB database for this particular device, with regard to the timestamp and the last viewed time, what, if anything, do you observe in reference to that depicted in this, and could you direct the jury's attention to it?
Yeah, so this timestamp is the last viewed time according to the database itself. It's already been offset so that it's in local time. This particular table, we can see there are records missing. Between records 4025 and 4031, we have, 4025 and 4031, we have 4026, 27, 28, 29, and 30 missing. And typically the timestamps that we do have here, some of them are separated by as little as a second or two.
Now, with reference to the house long to die in cold, that was record 4028, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so based on records missing from this portion of the phone as far as that database, what, if anything, did you endeavor to do with respect to ascertaining what?
So first of all, the task was to try to recover the deleted messages. The deleted history records from browser state. So first of all, I was reading the deleted pages, essentially, to find the records that had been deleted from this current version of the page.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you another document. I'll ask you to do that. Up in the finish.
Yes,
And do you recognize that document, sir?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
This is the same data source, so it's still browserstate.db, but now looking at it with the unique recovered records.
And what is that last term that you use? What does that mean? I'm sorry.
So typically there can be lots of different versions of a page within a WAL file. So you may have several page ones, several page twos, and so on. What I looked at is doing is recovering the data where the records that I recover are different from each other. So if I recover the same record multiple times, I can ignore it, but if I recover the same record with a slight change, then I would show it in this view.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'll seek to introduce in a minute. Sir, no objection.
Okay. Exhibit 620.
Thank you.
Your Honor, with court's permission, may I publish that for the jury?
Yes.
Again, Mr. Whitman, if you could, move the ways of order to find it helpful, direct the jury's attention to what are we looking at here and what, if anything, did you uncover during this portion of your analysis?
Yes. So again, the very first column on the left is the unique identifying number. You'll notice that there are some numbers here which are repeated. This is, as I say, because the records are recovered from multiple versions of the same page. There was actually 16 versions of this record across 23 different versions of this particular page. These three had some difference. Primarily, it was what's called the tab order field, but that's the only difference that showed up across these three host long to die in the cold records. All the rest show the same URL, the same ID number at the beginning, or tab ID number, and the same timestamp. Worth noting, there is no title shown in this particular record. Again, that speaks to the fact that this page didn't successfully complete loading. Otherwise, there would be a title of Google search, host long to die in the cold, as you saw on some of the other examples earlier.
Now, sir, with respect to the table up here, is there any indication in regard to private browsing that you were talking about before?
No, in iOS 15, as I mentioned, if you are using private browsing mode, there is no records recorded in this database at all.
So the fact that that's not listed in this table, what, if anything, does that tell you?
Everything that was recorded in this database was conducted not in private browsing mode.
Now, with respect to your work within your field, are you familiar with a term called a session?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean and how it applies to this specific instance?
Essentially the life of the particular tab. So when I start a tab and I start to use navigation, I go to different websites. All of my navigation events would be considered part of the same browsing session, essentially.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to the knowledge C database for a moment. And again, if you could, maybe repeating just as far as, can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean as far as what is the knowledge C database in respect to the other databases you've been talking about?
Yeah, so far the bulk of what we've discussed, the history.db, the browser state DB, and mobile safari.plist are all particular to the Safari application on iOS. Knowledge C is much more global. It's much more ingrained within iOS. Everything is essentially recorded in there on iOS 15. So again, backlight activity, unlock activity, application state activity, and web usage activity is all recorded as part of Knowledge C.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you another document, you can just review that for a couple of minutes.
Yes,
And do you recognize that document, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that?
This is a document I created based on the Knowledge C web usage records.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'll to seek to introduce and admit that the exhibit. No objection.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, may we publish that to the jury?
Yes.
Sir, again, what's up on the screen, do you recognize that as what's before you as the next exhibit?
I do, yes.
And if you could, again, Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to scroll down just a bit to the green tabs. Thank you. Now, if you could, sir, again, using that laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's, well, first, can I ask you, what is it that we're looking at in this exhibit?
Okay, this is a particular, what's called a stream within Knowledge C. A stream is basically all like information being grouped together. So in this particular case, the stream is related to Safari. And it's telling us what web page was visible on screen, what time it started and what time it finished.
Now, with respect to this particular tab, there are portions that are highlighted in green and portions that are highlighted in blue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury what the portions highlighted in green represent?
I highlighted the sections in green due to their timestamp. So typically, these items last between 2:27:37 a.m. and 2:27:53 a.m. So around the time of the Google search, if you were to believe the browser state.
And with respect to the items highlighted in blue, what, if any, what are those?
The ones in blue are the actual Knowledge C records that show when the host long to die in the cold and the how long to die in the KICD web pages were actually visible on screen.
And so from this, what, if anything, were you able to ascertain as to the searches or the time associated with the searches from your analysis here?
At 2:27:40, the only websites that were visible on screen were related to Ozone Basketball and Hockomock Sports, and that the how long to die in the KICD first appeared on screen at 6:23:56, and Host Long to Die in Cold first appeared on the screen at 10:33 a.m.
So those two searches from your review of this distraction in this device never appeared on the screen prior to 6:23 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
Now, from all this, sir, what, if anything, were you able to conclude with regard to these searches?
So essentially, ignoring the browser state timestamp is important because that is not a reliable timestamp to show when that URL was visited. We have mobile Safari.plist record searches that show 6:23 and 6:24, and we show the same searches with very similar timestamps within half a second. as showing up on screen in knowledge C for the how long to die in the kickd. And the how long to die in the cold was actually several hours later, which took a little bit more explaining, looking at knowledge C and when the applications were opened up.
Now, with respect to your view of the extraction of the device around these times, were you able to ascertain as to what time this particular device connected to a Wi-Fi at sometime after 2 a.m.?
I actually didn't look at any Wi-Fi connection information.
And with respect to 2:27 in the morning, 2:27 a.m., what were the websites that the device had visible, and what were the websites that the device was connected to at that time?
So according to the knowledge C records, which were mostly also reflected within the history DB as well, it was the Hockomock Sports, YouTube, Ozone Basketball, and that's it for the main domains.
Now, with regard to the Wi-Fi connection, is your memory exhausted as it pertains to that?
Yeah, I don't remember looking at Wi-Fi history.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a copy of your report.
Thank you.
Review that and look up when you finish.
Okay.
And sir, I'm sorry, in the interest of time, if I could ask you just to look at the next page as well, just briefly. Bless you.
Okay.
Is your memory refreshed, sir?
I do, yes.
May I approach to retrieve?
Yes.
So, Mr. Whiffen, from your review of the extraction report in regard to this device of Ms. McCabe's, about what time was the connected to a Wi-Fi network called McCabe?
I believe it was 0207. I didn't actually remember the timestamp just then.
And with respect to the disconnection from that, do you know when that was?
I can't recall.
Your Honor, if I may approach? I mean, in interest of time, Your Honor, may the witness.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, if you can, from looking at your report, if you can just indicate to the jury as far as the Wi-Fi connections with.
Okay. The Wi-Fi was connected at 0212 and disconnected at 0539. There was no further Wi-Fi activity until 11 a.m.
Thank you, sir. May I approach just to retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, sir, are you familiar with something called a write-ahead log or a wall file?
I am, yes.
And if you could explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is and how it applies in this specific case.
Yes. So a write-ahead log is essentially a temporary store for database pages. When I'm talking about database pages, it's not something that the user ever sees. It's part of the structure of SQLite databases. Just as chapters in a book can span multiple pages, data in a database can span multiple pages also, and it's not necessarily in the expected order. It's up to the database application to find those pages and order them correctly in order to display the data to the user. The WAL file, on the other hand, it still contains pages, but they're organized in frames, essentially. And a frame is the same as a page, but with additional information at the top that identifies what page it is. So I mentioned earlier that it's possible to have multiple versions of the same page within the WAL file. That's because every time I write a record to the database, a new frame is created and the page is updated. So for example, if I was to have a new database, create a record, a new frame is created with page 1, and it adds my record. As soon as I add a second record to that database, a new frame is created again. So I now have frame 1 and frame 2. Both of those frames would contain a version of page 1. The first frame would contain only record 1. The second frame would contain records 1 and 2, and so on. Forensically, where it gets interesting is on the edit or deletion of a record, because the same process is applied. So now a new frame is created. The page number is the same as previously, so we'd still have a page 1. But now only the records that I don't want to delete are copied across. So I could end up in a situation where I have 4 versions of page 1. One has record 1, one has records 1 and 2, one has records 1, 2, and 3. But the most recent version of the page only has record 1 and 3, for example. Now, a normal piece of database software will only look for the most recent version of the page, so you would only see records 1 and 3. The forensic software can look at all previous versions of the page as well, and that's how we're able to recover record 2 in that instance. And that's essentially how we were able to recover the browser state record from WAL.
Now, sir, turning to that issue as far as deletion, what, if anything, well, let me ask you this first, just before we leave the WAL file. So with regard to the WAL file, what, if any, relevance is there that certain data only exists within the WAL file?
So again, if I create a record that's in the WAL and delete it before it gets committed, which means when it gets merged into the main database, then it exists only in the WAL. It could be that it's a brand new record that just hasn't been written yet, or it could be one which was deleted from the database prior to the commit occurring.
When you say commit, what exactly is, what does that mean?
Commit's a process where essentially the database looks at all of the most recent versions of each page in the WAL file, copies them out from WAL and puts it into the main database, and then deletes the WAL file altogether. So at that point, we lose the ability to recover data from WAL because the WAL doesn't exist, but we have all the most recent versions of the page.
Now, sir, turning to the concept or the topic of deletion of data, what, if anything, did you find with regard to deletion of data with respect to this search as it applied to the P-list that you discussed before?
Recovering data that's been deleted from P-list is not really possible. So all we can say is if this record exists within the P-list, it hasn't been deleted.
Now, same question with regard to issues of deleted data with regard to the history DB.
There was no records of any, so there's no evidence of any records being deleted from history.db since early January. I think it was like the 3rd of January up to February 2nd.
And how were you able to tell that with regard to the history DB?
Again, every record is given a unique number, and there'd be a gap in that numbering system if a file or if a record had been deleted. The fact that there was no gaps indicates that nothing had been deleted.
And with regard to deletion, what, if anything, were you able to ascertain with regard to deletion versus web usage in the Knowledge C database?
Knowledge C contains such a large amount of different type of data that's always being added and deleted for various reasons, none at the discretion of the user. It's a completely system-driven event to delete information from Knowledge C. So we can't say what was deleted from Knowledge C, but we can see that during the times of Safari usage, records exist within Knowledge C that indicate, or certainly appear to indicate, that nothing was deleted.
What, if anything, were you able to find with regard to deletion in respect to the browser state DB database?
Browser state did have numerous records that had been deleted. Some we were able to recover. 3 records from browser state all had a timestamp very similar to 22740. These were 3 records that had been deleted at some point.
What are some of the options for deleting data from the browser state DB?
So the first most prominent option is to delete absolutely everything from the device, or delete all history from the device, which, as I mentioned earlier, we know that didn't happen because we still have other records. So the only other real option is to delete selectively. That could mean delete one at a time, and it could mean delete either the full day, the last 2 days, or the last hour. But in all of those cases, the record must exist in history.db in order to be deleted from browser state. The fact that this record, the hostlong and the how long today and the kickd don't exist within the history database would mean that the user would never have the option to selectively delete that record.
May I approach Sean?
Yes.
Showing you another document,
Thank you.
sir. If you could look at that up when you finish.
Yes,
Do you recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
So this is a list of the browser state DB records showing a red line where a record or more have been deleted.
And again, the term deleted, as far as it applies to this particular area of the database, what exactly does that mean again?
It means the record has been marked as deleted. If you were to read this database in a regular database application, you would not see it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't recover it.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm also seeking to introduce in the minutes the next exhibit.
The exhibit?
I have no objection to the exhibit, if that was the question.
That is the question.
We're good.
Thank you.
Your Honor, with court's permission, may we publish Exhibit 622 to the jury?
Yes.
And again, sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 622?
It says yes.
And if you could, please, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observe in this.
So again, we can use the number down the left side, which will identify the unique identifier given to each of these records. And we can see that the red line between the first 2 records indicates that records between 3986 and 3993 have been deleted. We can see that record 4001 is deleted. Records between 4004 and 4019 had been deleted. Record 4020 was deleted. And then finally, records between 4025 and 4031 had been deleted also.
Now, sir, as far as records 4024 and 4025, what, if anything, were you able to ascertain as far as the dates and times associated with those?
Yeah, so these particular records show up at 227.31 and 227.33 respectively. And this matched records within Knowledge C that showed that at this particular time when the tab took focus, that particular website was also shown visible to the user in Safari.
Now, as far as the date and time for 4024 and 4025, what, if anything, did you observe with respect to the date and time for 4026? And what can you tell about that?
So 4026 was approximately a second or two after the record here, 227.33. I believe it was at 227.35. And then again, there was another record, 4027, which again was another 2 or 3 seconds after that time. So within a 9-second period between 227.31 and 227.40, there were 5 records within browser state DB that had a timestamp within that 9 seconds, all with completely different types of website, ranging from PayPal, banking, YouTube, and the horse longs down the cold.
Now, sir, with respect to, are you familiar with the term called spontaneous deletion?
I believe so.
And can you explain to the jury what that is?
It's not a term that I would use, but essentially a cleanup operation would occur on the device where it would look for orphaned records, records that are old enough to not be required anymore, and they would just be deleted by the system without any direction from the user.
Now, during the testing that occurred, your testing, which occurred with respect to this device, what, if anything, did you observe with regard to spontaneous deletion?
I wasn't able to replicate the spontaneous deletion. I was able to replicate completely orphaned records. So a record that existed in browser state without a corresponding record in history.db. And it meant that there was no way for me to delete that record manually without deleting everything from the device regarding history.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May we approach, please?
Okay, could you turn the lights on, please, Tony? Thank you.
You are unmuted.
All right, so you're introducing those 4 pages or whatever it is, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor.
As one exhibit?
As the next 4 exhibits.
Okay. All right, so those will be admitted. Were you going to publish those? Because you can go ahead and publish them while this is.
I don't think that's,
Yeah, great.
may I have just one moment, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, if I can take them just one by one, I think that might be.
Okay.
I'm showing your documents, you recognize that?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
This is a report from my Artex tool showing the history database at 21:39:34 on the 27th of January and 22:55:09 on the 27th of January.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm off to seek and introduce the minutes of the next exhibit.
All right, so all 4 are in. Okay, so you don't need to, you already marked them?
They have not been marked.
6:23.
I have one moment, Your Honor. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if we could publish that to the jury.
Yes.
Now, sir, with regard to this, we're looking at record number 4026, is that correct?
Yes, I believe we are.
And again, if you could direct the jury's attention to what exactly are we looking at in this exhibit with regard to record 4026?
Yeah, so in the right column, we see the source of the information. So history.db is the database. History_visits would be the table. And then the unique identifying number of 31407 and 31408. We see that the start time, or the time that that particular website was navigated to, according to history.db, was, as I say, both on the 27th of January, one at 21:39 and 34 seconds local time, and one at 22:55:09 local time. And both of these websites are related to Hockenmock Sports. We have the URL at the top, followed by the title of the page, followed by a visit count that tells us how many times that page has been visited before.
Sorry, one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
That next document, do you recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
This is the same kind of report. This is related to the YouTube record that was part of the browser state database, related to It's Raining Men on YouTube.
Is that the record number 4027, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Your Honor, may I approach again?
Yes. Okay. Exhibit 624.
Your Honor, very briefly, may we publish that to the jury as
Yes.
well? And sir, what's up on the screen now, is that what you have before you as the next exhibit?
It is, yes.
And again, if you could, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observe in this record of 4027.
Yeah, so again, we have 5 records related to the YouTube video, It's Raining Men, starting at record 31398, 31399, 31400, 31401, and 31402. These were all accessed on the afternoon of the 27th of January 2022.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Another document, do you recognize that?
I do.
What do you recognize that to be?
This is the same again, related to record 4029. Shows that a website was visited on the 28th of January 2021.
And Your Honor, ask that this be marked.
Okay.
Excuse me, as the next exhibit.
625.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, may we publish that briefly?
Yes.
As well. Sir, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as the next exhibit in regards to record 4029?
It is, yes.
And again, if you could explain to the jury what are we looking at?
Yeah, so this URL, cantonma.org, relates to the URL that was provided in record 4029 of the browser state database. It shows that this web page was accessed at 1 p.m. And 17 minutes and 0 seconds, and 1 p.m. 17 minutes and 8 seconds on the 28th of January 2022.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Another document, sir. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And what do you recognize that?
Again, the same kind of report, again, this time for record 4030 from Browser State, and it shows access to Ozone Basketball.
And with regard to that report, as far as the same kind of report, that's from your tool, the ArtX tool, is that correct?
Correct.
And that ArtX tool, is that a widely available tool used within the field of forensic investigators?
Yeah, it's something that I say I've worked on for around 5 years. I've given it away free to the digital forensics community for 5 years. There's approximately 600 users globally, and it's taught as part of the SANS digital forensics training courses.
Thank you. May I approach again just to retrieve your honor?
Yes.
I'll move that as remarked as the next
Yes.
exhibit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May we publish that for the
Yes.
Your Honor? With regard to this exhibit up on the screen, record 4030, again, if you could just draw the jury's attention or direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observe in this exhibit.
Yeah, so again, we have records from the history database related to Ozone Basketball, and it shows that this website was accessed at 11 a.m. and 26 minutes on the 25th of January, 2022.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, you can. Now, with respect to sort of the totality of your analysis, Mr. Whitman, what, if any, conclusions did you come to as to the timing of the two searches in question with relation to what you observed in your analysis and testing of this device?
Yes. So in conclusion, I determined that the tab that was used was focused at 227.40. So the tab was opened at that time, at which point it was being used to show Ozone Basketball and Hockomock Sports websites. The 6:23 timestamp is when the search was first conducted. Never loaded the page, otherwise there'd be a record in the history database. And while that page was still loading, a secondary search was conducted for Hoslong to Die in the Cold. Again, that page never loaded either, although these both did show up in the Knowledge C database to show that the browser was trying to display these pages. Safari was closed prior to the Hoslong to Die in the Cold record being shown on screen at all, but when it was reopened at 10:33 in regards to whatever other Safari activity was to be conducted, it appeared on screen. So we have a 10:33 record where Hoslong to Die in the Cold was shown on screen, even though the page never successfully loaded.
And with respect to your analysis and your testing here, what, if any, opinion do you have as to whether or not any of the data marked as deleted was actually user deleted, or a user actually actively went through the process of deleting the data?
Yeah. So again, we know that she didn't, we know that nobody deleted the entire history. So that leaves the only option to be selectively deleting records. The fact that there are no missing records in HistoryDB shows that it's impossible that that record could have been deleted by the user. It would have just been orphaned in the database, and I believe would have deleted itself at some stage whenever a particular cleanup function ran. Although, as I said earlier, I haven't been able to replicate that. I was able to continue to read the various versions of the page that contained Hoslong to Die in the Cold browser state record, and found that it existed at the same time as another record that was created at least 2 days later. Therefore, I can determine that that particular record was not deleted until at the earliest, 10 p.m. on the 31st of January. And that it's not possible that the user could have created or caused that deletion to occur.
Now, over the course of your analysis and testing or review of the extraction in this case, did you have occasion to review an affidavit of a Mr. Richard Green?
I did, yes.
And what, if any, opinions or conclusions do you have as to that affidavit?
I had issues with several of the statements being made as part of the affidavit.
And what issues were those, sir?
Namely, it specified that Cellbrite report identified that the search was conducted at 2:27:40. And as I've explained, I believe the tab took focus at 2:27:40, not when the search occurred. The report mentioned that Cellbrite report identified it was deleted by the user. We don't do that. We'll tell you that a record is deleted, but we don't specify how the record was deleted. That's something for the examiner to determine. I forget. Oh, and then there was a mention of the purpose of the browser state database. The explanation given was correct for iOS 14 and below, but not for 15 and above, which is relevant in this case.
Now, you mentioned this issue as far as coming up, obviously, in this case and some other instances, phone calls or inquiries that you received from Austria and other places. What, if anything, have you or your company, Cellbrite, done with regard to rectifying this issue?
Well,
I'll allow it.
okay, we recognize that this timestamp could be misleading. Regardless of how we label that timestamp, the very fact that a timestamp is there, we feel would be or potentially misrepresented. So the decision was taken to remove the timestamp altogether from that information. So now we show the web page was visited, but we don't attribute a time to that purely because it could be wildly inaccurate.
Thank you. Your Honor, this may be the appropriate time for the instruction.
Okay. All right, so jurors, we're about to see a demonstration by Mr. Whiffen. It's simply a demonstration to help you to understand the evidence that you've heard. It's not evidence from this case, but it helps you understand the evidence in this case. You must decide this case based solely on a fair consideration of the evidence and nothing but the evidence. But this is a demonstration to help you understand that evidence.
Your Honor, our rights are preserved, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so to that point, Mr. Whiffen, were you able to prepare a demonstration in regard to what you've been discussing through the course of your testimony?
I was, yes.
And that demonstration doesn't specifically reflect on the searches or the extraction report that you looked at in this case, correct?
Correct.
But as far as the overall issues that you've been discussing in your testimony, correct?
That's correct.
And with the court's permission, may the witness now illustrate that to the jury.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, on the left there, you can see a screen of an iPhone, and that is a phone that I have in front of me live. It's just demonstrating what I can see on the phone. This is my Artex tool, and the feature which I continuously use this tool for, which is not available really in any other vendor tools, is the ability to create a live connection between my computer and the phone. The live connection is what I've just started here, and what's going to happen is all of the files and folders that exist on the phone will be mapped to my computer so that I can navigate it, I can look around, and I can take a look at near enough live records on the device. Prior to the availability of this tool, I would have to test a theory on a phone, do an extraction, and then pass the extraction, which could take anywhere between 20 minutes and several hours. The reason that I'm using this tool today is because I can do those same tests within 10 or 20 seconds, typically. So I just need to wait for this section to do. So it's already mapped out all the files and folders. It's now asking for a few important pieces of information, which it will then populate on the screen. So information such as the device, serial number, etc. What we're interested in, though, is the browser state record. So I can go to the browser state database and take a look at that and open that up. And you can see that at this moment in time, I have no records in the database at all. If I go back into the live view of the phone, you can see I have Safari open from last night. So it's been sat in the background overnight and not doing anything. But at 8:10 last night, I performed this search in a brand new window. So started Safari, opened up a new tab, immediately searched for new tab at 2010 on the 16th of June. If I now search for the time right now, 1442, what I can do is go back to my RTX tool and press this reload button. That's going to delete the database from my computer only and copy the most recent copy of the database and WAL file from my phone back to my computer, where it shows me I still have no records. That's expected behavior because at the moment I've not closed the tab. So if this, again, was iOS 14, there would be a record there to say what tab I had open, but iOS 15 doesn't work that way. If I now go back to my tabs and actually just close this window, I can go back into RTX and hit reload again, and we now see we have some records. I can look at this particular record, and you'll see the title is 1442 Google search. You'll see the Google search record here, so I just need to change the time zone as well to Eastern time. So you see it's the most recent search which I conducted, the 1442 search. The last viewed time, though, still shows as 8:10 p.m. last night, because that's the time that the tab was focused, not the time that the search was conducted.
Thank you, sir. If I may have a moment, John?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Giannetti?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Clifford.
Good afternoon.
Sir, you had spoken a little bit about what was your assignment here in terms of the data that was sent to you. And I believe that you testified regarding that 2:27 a.m. or 2:27 and 42nd a.m. timestamp that it didn't make sense to the investigators, correct?
Correct.
Were you told that one of the investigators was Trooper Michael Proctor?
I don't recall any names being mentioned. The ticket came to me, or the request came to me via another Cellbrite employee who'd been asked about this case and asked whether we could offer any help.
Okay, thank you. You would agree with me that when you're making or doing a simulation, you want it to be as close to an apples-to-apples comparison as you can get?
As best possible, yes.
And to get truly accurate research results, you want to eliminate as many variables as you can, correct?
Correct.
You wouldn't, for instance, want to use an Android operating system to try to replicate the activity from Jennifer McCabe's Apple iPhone, correct?
Correct.
What version of iOS did you use for your testing of Jennifer McCabe's data?
So this test has been undertaken on various different versions of iOS, from iOS 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and most recently on the beta version of 18 last week. This particular demonstration was on 15.8.2.
Okay. And you're aware, you said 15.8.2.
Correct. I've also tested on 15.7.
Oh, fair enough. You're aware, however, that Ms. McCabe was using iOS version 15.2.1, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree that the way that an artifact is stored would depend on the iOS version that you use, correct?
Correct.
And your simulation did not use the iOS version that Ms. McCabe was running on her iPhone, correct?
Correct. I used the closest version I could find.
So I'd like to ask you some questions about the characteristics of browserstate.db-wall in record number 4028, if I can.
Okay.
That record number, I believe you testified, was found to be deleted, correct?
Correct.
But you were able to recover the date and time associated with it, correct?
The date and time of the last viewed?
Of that
Good.
record number.
Yes.
And what was that date and time?
2:27 and 40 seconds a.m.
You were also able to recover the content of that particular Google search itself?
I was able to recover the URL for it, yes.
Okay, and what was that Google search?
Hoss Long to die in the cold.
And it's true, however, that the session history could not be recovered, correct?
That's correct.
Now, given those characteristics that you've just discussed, did your testing result in a WAL file record, a WAL file record, that matched the characteristics of 4028? In other words, deleted with session history not recoverable?
The issue with the session history, I was able to recover only the first page of session history. What happens is when there's a large amount of data that's split over multiple pages, if it's a live record, all those pages point to each other so that you can chain it together and get one large amount of information. Once they've been deleted, some of those pages can be overwritten, and therefore the pointers don't make sense anymore. So the amount of information in this session was way larger than one page, and I wasn't able to recover anything further.
Okay, and you'd agree that the simulation was done using a different operating system, correct?
Correct.
Were you able to recreate the other deletions that appeared before and after that record 4028?
Which deletion, sorry?
Well, you had testified, and I believe there was an exhibit that was introduced that showed that there were multiple deletions both before and after, correct?
Correct.
Were you able to recreate those deletions?
When I manually deleted records from the history, then the records also were deleted from the browser state.
Now, I believe that you testified, and if you didn't, I believe it's in your report, that there are essentially 5 mechanisms for record deletions in the browser state database, correct?
Correct.
You ruled out 4 of them pretty quickly, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you've testified to that today, correct?
Correct.
The only remaining option was selective deletion by a user, or there's some internal mechanism for record deletion that is not fully understood, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you know of, as you testified today, you know of no internal mechanism for record deletion that's not fully understood, correct?
I've not been able to replicate that function, no.
All right. If there is no unknown internal mechanism for record deletion that's not fully understood, that would leave selective deletion by a user, correct?
Not in this case, no.
All right. Well, selective deletion, you would agree, means that a user selects what to delete, correct?
Correct.
And regarding the user, the term user, what is that? Who is that?
Whoever's using the phone at the time.
Okay, so it's actually somebody who is using the actual iPhone itself, correct?
Correct.
Not necessarily a computer expert, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that somebody who had access to the data before it was extracted and sent to you could have made selective deletions of the data?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
No, I don't.
Are you aware of an app called MySQL?
Yes.
What is MySQL?
MySQL is just a method for viewing SQLite databases.
All right. If someone had access to the raw data, again, before it was sent to you, and used that app, they could make selective deletions of the data, couldn't they?
I assume you're talking about opening up the extraction, taking out the particular file and editing it?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You're right, Your Honor. I apologize. And I apologize to you. If you could restate your question or answer or give me your full answer.
Okay. So it would be possible with the extraction to take out particular databases, alter them, and put them back into the extraction. But there's something called a hash mechanism that we have in place that would, it essentially hashes the original data, and then it can be hashed again at a later date. It results in a long string of characters, and if there's any changes to the original data, then we'd see that it's been modified.
Would you agree with me that someone with access to that data and an appropriate application or program could also delete and renumber history.db and knowledge.cso so that it would appear as though there was no break in the numbering, so that it would also appear that nothing was deleted?
It's potentially possible, but would require a large amount of knowledge and skill to do in a way that can't be detected.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Lally?
Any discrepancy between the iOS version in Ms. McCabe's phone and the iOS version in the demonstration that you did, what, if any, impact does that have on what you showed this jury?
So in this particular case, every iOS version that I tested, as I mentioned, from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, the timestamp is always referring to the time that the tab took focus. So even though there are some differences with when the record's created, the meaning behind that timestamp has been consistent.
Now, what you were asking about what you were asked about in regard to selective deletion, you indicated that there's no evidence of that in this case. Is that correct?
Correct. Selective deletion would require that the record existed in the history database in order to be selected to be deleted. The fact that there's no missing records indicates it was never written into that database and therefore could not have been selectively deleted.
Now, the hash mechanism that you testified as far as detecting whether or not someone had surreptitiously gone in and deleted things, did you see any evidence of that in your review of the extraction of Ms. McCabe's phone?
I didn't have access to the hash information to see whether any changes had been made. That's something that the original examiner would have had access to. From my point of view, there was nothing in there that would indicate that tampering had occurred. The timestamps all made sense for the files. The historical pages all made sense. So it's probably possible, but it would take a large amount of skill to do.
Now, with regard to your analysis and your testing in this case, again, what is your opinion or conclusion as to when these two Google searches were conducted?
I'm of no doubt that the only time those two searches were conducted was at 6:23 and 6:24 on the morning of the 29th.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Prior to today, have you ever heard of spontaneous deletion?
It's not a term that I'm familiar with.
Thank you.
All right, sir, you are all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you need a couple minutes to take your stuff down?
I can probably be quite fast. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lally, your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth call Trooper Nicholas Carino to the stand.
Okay.
I should give the court and jury the case down here, should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yep, Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
And how are you employed, sir?
I work for the Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you been a member of the Massachusetts State Police?
This is my 9th year now.
Now, prior to working with the state police, what, if any, prior experience did you have in the field of law enforcement?
I was a local police officer in Norwood for almost 11 years.
Now, with respect to your role within the state police, where is it that you work now?
I currently work at the Norfolk District Attorney's Office.
And within the detective unit, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And with respect to that, what, if any, specialized role do you have within the detective unit attached to the Norfolk DA's office?
Yeah, I conduct cell phone forensics, computer forensics, and I also do sexual assault investigations.
Now, with regard to the electronic forensics, what, if any, specialized training have you received in that particular area?
I have about 300 or so hours Celebrate, CCO, CCPA, cell phone repair forensics, Burla motor vehicle forensics, Axiom magnet cell phone and computer forensics, X-Ways. These are all different programs used for cell phone and computer forensics.
Now, sir, at some point, did you become involved in the investigation involving the defendant Karen Reed?
Yes.
And with respect to that, let me just ask it, at some point, did you become aware of an affidavit from a defense expert named Richard Green?
Yes, I have.
And sometime following that, did you have occasion to reach out to Cellbrite with regard to what had been posited by Mr. Green as in regard to two Google searches contained within Jennifer McCabe's phone?
Yes, I did.
And eventually, at some point, did you have occasion to speak with the gentleman who came in here right before you, Mr. Ian Whiffen?
Yes, I did.
And so that wasn't Trooper Proctor that had reached out to Mr. Whiffen or had any communication that you're aware of with Mr. Whiffen, correct?
No, I reached out after the defense expert's findings were released, and I read his report.
And did you also have occasion to review a report from a Miss Jessica Hyde?
Yes, I did.
And with respect to those two reports, what, if any, conclusions or opinions did you come to independently in relation to those opinions of Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffen?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, Trooper Garino, you had mentioned that you've had specialized training in regard to something called Burla, correct?
Yes.
Could you please explain to the jury what Burla is and how is it used in criminal investigations in your line of work?
So Burla is a specialized hardware and software used to download the infotainment and telematics modules in a vehicle. So telematics module is basically like the SIM card for the car. And the infotainment system is your radio head unit that enables you to have Apple Play, CarPlay, or Android or Google Play for the vehicle.
And at some point, were you made aware of a search warrant that was authored in regard to seizing the infotainment system from Ms. Reed's vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And just so the record is clear, can you describe Ms. Reed's vehicle as far as what type of vehicle we're talking about?
Yes, it's a Lexus LX 570 SUV.
And specifically on February 2nd, 2022, did you have occasion to remove that infotainment system from the vehicle pursuant to that search warrant?
Yes, I did.
And once that item was removed from the defendant's vehicle, what, if anything, did you do with it?
After we removed it from the vehicle, it was brought back to Norfolk DA's office for data extraction, or attempt to.
And that data extraction, if you know, based on your training experience, sort of how is that conducted, or what is the process of extracting data from using Burla?
Yeah. So depending on the system, it's dismantled. They have this specialized hardware that actually goes onto the motherboards of these systems, and we're able to pull the data. Or the other option, if that's not viable, is to do a chip off, where we have to basically destroy the motherboard and take the memory chips off the devices to try to get the data that way.
Now, with reference to this specific device, what, if any, efforts did you undergo in order to extract the information without using a chip
So at the time that we pulled the system, it was not supported. I emailed Burla and called them, see if they had a timeline of when this might be supported so we could get the data. We deemed chip-off as a last resort because it is a destructive process. So once those memory chips are taken off, the likelihood of trying to reattach them and get it to work again is very slim.
Let me stop you there for a second. When you talk about an item being supported, what does that mean?
Whether or not Burla has the ability to pull the data from that vehicle.
And how is that sort of determined, or how are you able to ascertain whether or not a particular vehicle, make, model, manufacturer is supported by the Burla device?
They have an app, and they also have their tech support. But if you put in the VIN of the vehicle, or if you don't have the VIN, you have the make, model, and trim level, like limited or XLE or whatever, you would be able to go in and look it up and basically say, Burla will tell you, yes, it's supported for GPS points, or it's supported for diagnostic data, or whatever that they're able to get out of the vehicle. And they work with the automakers to get these, get this data. So.
And approximately how many different types of if we're looking at sort of the entirety of different makes and models and manufacturers, if you know, sort of what percentage of those types of vehicles are actually supported and Burla can actually extract information?
I don't know as of right now. It's a lot, and they're constantly updating it, so they are able to do more vehicles as time goes on.
Now, at this particular time, as you sit here today, on June 17th, 2024, the vehicle that the defendant was operating on January 29th, 2022, is that vehicle available or supported by Burla at this time?
The trim level that the defendant had is not still supported. There is Toyota and Lexus support now, but it's not, unfortunately, for her model.
Now, you mentioned that you had reached out to the Burla company for updates as far as the availability or when the defendant's vehicle might be supported. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And about how many times and over what time period are we talking about that you reached out to ascertain?
Immediately when I did the extraction, I should say extraction, but when I took the system out of the vehicle, I had to reach out to Burla because where it wasn't supported, they actually had to send me tech diagrams so I could go in and, again, not destroy the whole vehicle as I just took those components out. Over the next, almost 2 years, year and a half of going back and forth with them, with their support and their sales team.
And when you say going back and forth, about how often were you reaching out to them, or how often were you getting a response in regard to the Burla?
Usually every few months, I want to say every 3 months, give or take. I forget the exact number, but phone calls or an email to them asking.
Now, beyond that, are you familiar with a National Cyber Crime Conference?
Yes.
And do you attend that on an annual basis at least?
Yes, I do.
And with respect to that, what, if any, time at those conferences did you spend dedicated to ascertaining the availability or the supportability of this vehicle with reference to Burla?
So Burla has a booth at the National Cybercrime Conference. I spoke with their sales team there. Their response was to keep calling Burla, keep pestering them, and they might actually get the support sooner than later.
And again, were you ever able to ascertain or get the support to download the information from them?
No, unfortunately.
Now, at some point, were you able to download any information from that particular infotainment system from the defendant's vehicle?
Not from the infotainment system, but Burla released a new item similar to a mechanic scan tool. It plugs into the OBD2 port, which is underneath the dash. So we're basically, if a mechanic went in there with a scan tool to tell you why you have a check engine light, this does something similar. So you plug it in, and then it pulls the car diagnostic data from that.
And as far as the data that you received from that, what, if anything, did you observe?
Again, I got a series of 14s was the numbers. It was no readable data. I reached out to Burla and asked them, I said, is there a reason why it pulled this data, but when I put it into the software, it's not telling me anything. It's not giving me any readable data. And they said they know it is diagnostic data, but they haven't got anything from Lexus to say these 14s, these codes mean this. Oh, they only know it as emissions.
So was Berla itself able to read that information and transform that sort of binary code into any sort of readable data for you?
Other than the number 14, no.
Now, from there, what, if anything, did you do with regard to the Berlin, the defendant's vehicle?
Was placed back into our digital evidence lab, and then we did eventually do a chip off to the device.
Now,
both devices.
with respect, excuse me, to the chip off, that was done sometime in December of 2023, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And again, if you could expound upon a little as far as, can you describe for the jury sort of the chip off process, why you were reluctant to do it, and what's entailed in it?
As I said before, it is a destructive process. As soon as we do it, we take those memory chips off. It's applying extreme amounts of heat to the motherboards to take the memory off. That'll heat it. You lose a lot of the soldering and capacitors, anything that's on that motherboard. So, like I said, once the memory chips are taken off, it's going to destroy the board.
And as far as that chip-off process, who, if anyone, was present with you, or who, if anyone, assisted you in removing that or conducting that chip-off process with regard to the motherboard from the infotainment system from the defendant's vehicle?
I'm sorry, at the time that we actually did the chip off?
Yes.
Yeah. It was myself, AG Speak, and Maggie Gaffney.
And who is AG Speak?
AG Speak is has his own forensic company, I guess you could call it, for Berla. I could consider an expert in the field, former California Highway Patrol officer that exclusively handled stolen cars.
And who is Ms. Gaffney?
She was a defense's expert. She's the one who actually did the chip off, applying the heat and taking the chips off in our presence. And she, I believe, works for, I'm sorry, the name of the company escapes me at the moment.
Now, with respect to the information that you, Ms. Gaffney, and Mr. Speak were able to remove pursuant to that chip-off process, what, if any, usable information were you able to glean from that?
As I was told by AG, there was no data that was recovered off the infotainment system or the telematics module from the chip off.
And as far as Ms. Gaffney, did you have any conversation with her as far as the information that she was able to glean or read or decipher from?
No, once she did the chip off, I had not spoken with her since.
You have a moment, John?
Yes.
Now, Chief Carino, at some point in late January, early February 2022, were you provided with some a laptop and/or desktop computers from the home of Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, I was.
And what, if anything, did you do with those?
One was a Dell laptop, the other was a HP all-in-one desktop. I removed the hard drives from both systems and used...
Objection, may you be seen, Your Honor?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
All right, Mr. Lally, you can continue.
So Trooper Guarino, there was a Dell laptop and an HP Pavilion all-in-one desktop, correct?
Yes.
These were taken from Mr. O'Keefe's home, is that correct?
Yes, they were.
What, if anything, did you do with respect to those computers?
As I said, I took the hard drives out of both machines. They were imaged, and the images were loaded into Axiom to view the data that was on them.
Now, when you say something was imaged, can you explain to the jury what you mean by that?
It's a bit-for-bit copy of the hard drive. Instead of us turning it on and going through it, which would change data, by taking the hard drives out and imaging them, it creates a one-for-one copy, so that way we can view it without changing anything in the system.
And you mentioned a tool called Axiom, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what is that Axiom tool and how does it work?
Yeah, it's another forensic tool that we use. Can do cell phones, computers. You use it to load the images so we can view the data.
And with respect to the imaging that was done with regard to the Dell laptop and the desktop, what, if anything, was it that you were looking for specifically on those devices?
We were looking for Ring video to see if either computer was used by Officer O'Keefe as a login machine to handle the account.
And from your review of what was extracted or imaged from each of those two respective computers, what, if any, information were you able to glean in reference to Ring.com or anything else?
Neither computer was used. One appeared to be used mostly by the kids, and the other, I believe it was the laptop, was used mostly by O'Keefe, but there were no Ring logins.
As far as the Ring connection, what, if any, devices were you, throughout the course of the investigation, were you able to ascertain were actually connected to the Ring cameras at Mr. O'Keefe's house?
Officer O'Keefe's cell phone.
Now, if there were any other devices, whether they were Mr. O'Keefe's or someone else's, ascertained from either the Ring footage or the information provided by Ring, whether or not there were any other devices beyond Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone that were linked to that account?
Not that I know of.
And I'm sorry, just not that there weren't any devices or not that you could tell?
Not that I could tell or that I ever heard of.
Now, Trooper Guarino, let me ask you some questions just in general about a cell phone extraction. You familiar with that term?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what is involved in that and how a cell phone extraction is performed as far as your experience with regard to investigations that you've been involved in?
Yeah. So most investigations, we get the cell phones from the scene, from a suspect, from a victim. They're put into airplane mode to preserve the data, so that way a remote wipe can't be sent to the phone from iTunes. If we can't put it into airplane mode, we'll put it into a Faraday bag, which blocks the cell phone signal, and then it's brought back to the lab and put into a Faraday box, which is has electrical outlets inside of it, so that way we can keep the phone charged.
And with regard to this investigation, you involved in the extraction of data or the examination of extracted data from any particular phones?
Yes, I did John O'Keefe's phone, Karen Reed's phone, and we had two witnesses' phones, but I don't remember doing the extractions themselves.
But as far as the data from those phones, have you had opportunity to look at that data? And specifically, I'm asking about both Jennifer McCabe's phone and Ms. Carrie Roberts' phone.
Yes, I have.
Now, were you also at some point provided with some material from Brian Higgins' phone?
Yes, I saw screenshots of text messages.
And from the material that you were provided with reference to Mr. Higgins' phone, were you then able to cross-reference that eventually at some point with respect to the information in both Ms. Reed's phone and Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, I was.
From what you reviewed, was the information contained within the material provided by Mr. Higgins, was that consistent with what you observed in Ms. Reed's phone as well as Mr. O'Keefe's?
Yes, I didn't see any differences in those messages.
Now, With respect to, starting with Ms. Reed's phone, that was received by you on January 29th, 2022, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you recall about what time it was and where you were when you received that phone?
I want to say 6 or 7 o'clock at night at the Norfolk DA's office.
And who did you receive that phone from?
Trooper Proctor.
And with reference to that phone, what condition was it in at the time as far as you referenced airplane mode, Faraday bag, things of that nature? How was it sort of when you received it?
I believe it was in airplane mode. The phone was in good working order. And it was placed downstairs in our lab plugged in to keep the phone battery charged.
Now, the same with respect to Mr. O'Keefe's phone. When and from whom did you receive that, and what kind of condition was that in when you received it?
I also got that from Trooper Proctor the same time as Miss Reed's phone. Same condition.
Now, with respect to the defendant's phone, at the time that you received it, did you have any passcode or any way to get into the phone?
I'm sorry, whose phone?
Ms. Reed's phone.
Oh, no. The software we use to try to bypass passwords to be able to extract the evidence, I should say the extraction of the data to look for evidence, her phone at that time was not supported.
Now, what, if anything, did you do with her phone in regard to that?
Again, made sure it was in airplane mode and just kept it plugged in until such time as the phone was supported, and then we could download it.
Familiar with a device called a Gray Key?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what that is and what, if anything, you did with regard to the defendant's phone and the Gray Key device?
Yep. So Gray Key is, again, specialized hardware and software used to plug in the phones, can do Apple or Android phones to bypass passwords.
And how does that sort of function, or how does that work as far as when you hook something, a cell phone or a cellular device up to a Gray Key tool? What is it doing and how does it work?
If I knew that, I'd be a millionaire. But it basically installs software onto it, and instead of when you put in 10 passcodes to an iPhone, on the 10th one, if it's wrong, it kills the phone forever. This has some secret software that's able to bypass that and basically keep hitting the phone with passcodes until it finds the right one.
So it essentially runs a bunch of different combinations of passcodes into the phone until it comes up with one that actually opens the phone.
Yes, that's correct.
And at some point, did the Gray Key device actually break into the defendant's phone?
Yes, it did.
Do you know about when that was in relation to when you received it?
Yeah, so we got the phone in January. It took, I believe support came out in, I want to say May or June, I don't remember the exact month, but we didn't actually get the passcode until August 16th of 2022.
And once that passcode was essentially broken into by the Gray Key device, then you're able to look into the phone, is that correct?
Yes, once the passcode's obtained, we download the data, and then we're able to take that extraction data and then open it up in Cellbrite or Axiom or whatever tool we're going to use to view it.
And the tools, as far as you're referring to, Cellbrite and Axiom, are you familiar with those tools through your course of your work as investigator with regard to electronic devices?
Yes.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of when you say Cellbrite and Axiom, as far as then tools are concerned, how do they work and sort of what is it that you do with the device with reference to Cellbrite?
So what do we do with the extractions once we go to open them?
Well, how is the information extracted, first of all, and then what, if anything, do you do with the map?
So Gray Key will pull the extraction. It just, once the code's received, it again uses its software, pulls the data out, puts it into an encrypted, it's MD5 or SHA. It's an encryption key that has it's a unique key that, so if you changed anything inside that zip file, it would change the encryption number to show that something was tampered with. We take that encrypted zip file and we open it up in the software, and that's able to say, you know, the call logs, the chats, the photos, the whole timeline of the phone.
Now, in addition to yourself, is there anyone else that works in this sort of capacity within your unit at the district attorney's office?
Yes, 2 other people.
And who are those 2 other people?
The director of our lab, Samantha Vogt, and Trooper Connor Keefe.
Now, beyond yourself, Trooper Keefe, and Ms. Vogt, anybody else from the detective unit as far as the troopers, would they have access to these devices, being defendants, Mr. O'Keefe's, Ms. McCabe's, or Ms. Roberts?
If they're in the digital evidence lab, no. Once the data is extracted from them, normally we give them back to the investigator or return to family. So that would be the only time that they would have access to the devices, or unless we kept them in the lab for, just for, I don't want to say safekeeping, but just for storage reasons.
Now, with reference to your review of any of the extractions related to any of those 4 devices, at any point in time, did you observe anything in reference to any information being taken off or deleted from any of those devices at any point in time?
No, sir.
Now, with respect to Ms. Reed's device, the defendant's device, it was sometime in August of 2022 that the gray key was able to break into the passcode and get into the device, correct?
That's correct.
And so then, once an extraction is done, that's then subsequently reviewed by someone within your unit, is that correct?
Yeah, so again, normally the investigators for the homicides know far more information about the crime and what occurred. So if need be, I'll load the phone up for them. They can go through it because they know what they're looking for. If they ask me, I'm happy to go through. If they can say, I'm looking for calls between this time period, or, GPS locations, things like that.
Now, with reference to the defendant's phone, at some point were you made aware that there was some privileged information contained within her phone?
Yes, I was.
So as a result of that, what, if anything, happened with the phone from there?
We notified our supervisors, and we did not look at her extraction until the privileged communications could be removed, and then we could, again, go back and re-inspect the data.
Now, as far as that whole process that was undertaken in regard to that, how long a time period, or when was it that you were able to have the privileged information extracted and then actually get to look at the defendant's phone?
It took months. I don't think we got it back from the AG's office until later, springtime of 2023-ish.
Now, with respect to the extraction from each of these 4 respective devices, that being the defendants, Mr. O'Keefe's, Ms. McCabe's, and Ms. Roberts, what kind of tools were used to conduct those extractions, sir?
Gray key, Windows 10, and then Cellbrite Physical Analyzer and Axiom, their program, Magnets program.
And so as far as, I guess my question is, as far as the different devices that are used, why are there different devices, and what is it that, say, one does versus the other?
So they both do great work with, decoding the data. I've noticed that Axiom does a better job at pulling GPS spots because it gives a speed and a estimated range of how strong the GPS signals are, as opposed to Cellbrite. They give native locations, but they don't have that extra data with it. So I like to look at both tools to make sure that I'm seeing everything that I need to.
Now, with respect to the defendant's phone, you at some point reviewed the extraction from the defendant's phone, correct?
Yes, I did.
And with respect to that phone, what, if anything, did you observe with regard to GPS locations associated with that device?
I didn't see that many, maybe a handful showing different spots in Canton, but nothing that stood out to me.
Now, with respect to your review of the phone, what, if anything, were you able to ascertain as to whether or not those GPS locations were allowed or permitted or turned off or on by a user?
I can't say. I didn't see anything, like I said, that stuck out to me. Normally, if the GPS points aren't there, then location services are probably turned off.
So what I'm asking, though, is the device itself was capable of retaining that data as far as GPS locations, correct?
Yes, if it's turned on.
and there were no real GPS locations to speak of that you observed in your review of the extraction of the defendant, correct?
That's correct.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe's phone, what, if anything, were you able to ascertain from that as far as GPS locations were concerned?
There was quite a bit, especially on January 29th.
Now, sir, before we get into that, if I could ask you some questions in regard to Ms. McCabe's excuse me, phone extraction. You had occasion to review that, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so, in regard to that also, you had mentioned that you had reviewed an affidavit from a defense expert or defense witness named Mr. Richard Green, correct?
That's correct.
And based on your review of that, what, if anything, based on your review of what Mr. Green said or did, what, if anything, did you then do with regard to Ms. McCabe's phone?
So I basically went point by point through his report to confirm or deny if what he was placing in there was true.
And what, if anything, were you able to ascertain or learn from going through Ms. McCabe's phone with reference to what Mr. Green had stated?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
It was mostly incorrect.
And when you say mostly incorrect, what was mostly incorrect?
So he states that there's a Google search that's done at 2:27 in the morning that immediately stuck out to me because when I went back and looked, that file that was parsed was not from the database that should have showed searches. This came from the session state tabs for Safari, which is a big red flag. It also came from a wall file, which is a dropping ground for where data is put before it's actually put into the main database itself. And then once it reaches a certain point, that data is automatically deleted by the device, not by a user, which Mr. Green had stated that a search was done and then it was purposely deleted. There was also items regarding phone calls being deleted. Again, they came from a wall file. Looking at it, again, it's stored in the knowledge seed, the main database. It's also stored in the biome, showing in the extraction, which is another storage area that Apple is using. Again, nothing, most of the stuff that I was reading in his report was either incorrectly, I don't know, written down or he's interpreted it incorrectly.
Now, with regard to the phone calls or the contacts that Mr. Green indicated were user deleted or deleted by the user, what, if any, information did you look in regard to that, and what, if anything, did you ascertain in regard to that?
Yeah, so he stated that Ms. McCabe had deleted 18 phone calls from the morning after John O'Keefe's body was found. Looking at the data from her call log, those calls, while they do show marked as deleted, again, they come from the wall file and they're also located in 2 other parts of the database. Again, as a user of an iPhone, you can't go in and just delete these files. They're handled by the operating system. It's impossible.
So as far as, what, if any, opinion do you, well, let me ask you this first. As far as a wall or writing a log file, can you explain that, what you understand that term to mean to the jury as it pertains to these particular items?
Yeah, so as I said, these files are dropping ground. So when you're using your apps, using the phone, takes that data, puts it into this wall file until you either close the app or you shut down the phone, or it reaches a certain number of data in the phone. That wall file will automatically delete from the phone. So this can be on a first in, first out basis. Again, like I said, it could be when data reaches a certain level, but those calls that are being marked as deleted, Celebrate seeing, it doesn't mean the user deleted them. It just means they're being removed from the wall file.
And you indicated that from your review of the phone extraction, there were other areas or or other databases, bases, within the phone that contain that same information?
Yes. So the main database of the iPhones is the Knowledge C database. They're also using Biome, and then if you're using the newer software now, it's another area I won't bore you with, but depending on the iOS you're using for the phone, it's going to depend on where that data is being stored.
Now, specifically with respect to Ms. McCabe's phone, one of the contentions Mr. Green had was in regard to a contact for Brian Albert. Is that correct?
Yes, that was another one.
With respect to that, what, if anything, were you able to find within Ms. McCabe's phone in regard to contact information for Brian Albert?
Yeah, so Mr. Green's report said that he located a deleted screenshot of Brian Albert's contact. That was in her phone. The contact for Brian Albert was still in her phone, not deleted. So I don't know, maybe she just deleted the screenshot.
Now, with respect to Ms. McCabe's phone, what, if anything, did you do with regard to the call log history in Ms. McCabe's phone?
I exported it all out to a PDF so I could view it. And again, like I said, there's, I think, 1,104 phone calls from going all the way back to October of 2020, I want to say. And phone calls, FaceTime, they're all, the calls are there, all the records, and they're all stored in different areas of the phone. The only ones that show the wall file deleted were the ones from the 29th going up to the end, towards the end of the day, on the 29th.
And now, with respect to the call history, where or how is that typically stored within an iOS device?
I believe that's stored in the call stored dash SQLite database.
And with reference to what, if any, difference storage-wise is that SQLite database versus the wall file?
So again, yeah, that database where the call logs are sent, it's going to have a corresponding wall file where the data is going to be put temporarily. And then, as I said, it gets automatically deleted by the iOS, by the operating software. It's not user enabled. Or
And so from your review of those 1,104 phone call history records contained within this extraction of Mr. McCabe's phone, what, if any, opinion do you have in regard to whether or not those items were deleted by any user?
I don't believe they were. And actually, I will say one of the phone calls was from the actual main call stored database. That could have been user deleted, but again, it's in two other spots in the operating system, so I don't know how or why the iOS stores it the way it does, and then marks what.
Now, sir, from your review of the 4 phone extractions that you reviewed in this case, were you able to export or print certain chat reports from specific people's phones or from specific people's phones with other individuals?
Yes, I was able to.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes. Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 48.
Okay.
You recognize, excuse me, do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
And what do you recognize as?
The first page is Facebook Messenger chats between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe.
And what's contained in there, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed from the extraction from Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, it is.
And specifically with reference to those chats between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, you also reviewed that material from the defendant's phone as well?
Yes, I did.
Material that you reviewed from the defendant's phone, is that consistent with what you observed in Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could request certain portions of what's been marked as Exhibit 48 being published to the jury as we go through them.
Okay?
Sir, if I could just start you out on page 1.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have that up on the screen. Now, with respect to what's up on the screen, the portion that you can see, do you recognize this, sir?
Yes, I do.
Now, what you have before you as Exhibit 48.
Yes.
Now, within this particular, from the perspective of this is from Mr. O'Keefe's phone, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So there will be blue bubbles and green bubbles, is that correct as well?
Yes.
And so who, as far as the blue bubbles are concerned, who is speaking in that context?
The blue bubbles will be from Ms. Reed, and the green bubbles are from Officer O'Keefe.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could please scroll down. Now, with respect to what's contained on this page 1 at the bottom, if you could read the date and the time and indicate who is speaking and what is said there, sir.
Yeah. So the blue bubble is Karen Reed and 1/28/2022 at 3:30 p.m. Hello. John says hi at 3:35 p.m.
Sorry, may I approach,
Yeah.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Yep. Those are the Facebook ones.
I'm sorry. What's contained in Exhibit 48 is the entirety of the chat report from Mr. O'Keefe's phone, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I apologize. Showing you another document. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be, sir?
These are the native chats, native messages from John O'Keefe and Karen Reed.
So these are just specifically broken down as far as the chats between Mr. O'Keefe's phone and Ms. Reed's phone, correct?
Correct.
And as far as your review of both of the extractions from both of those phones, the material contained within Mr. O'Keefe's phone is consistent with the material contained in the defendant's phone, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'll move to seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
Okay.
Exhibit 620.
627.
Yes. If that could be returned to the witness, Your Honor, if we could, with the court's permission, if we could publish that.
Yes. Go right ahead.
And now, Trooper Carino, do you recognize what's up on the screen as the next exhibit, sir? Ms. Gilman, I'm sorry, if you could scroll down just a little bit.
Yes.
And again, from this first page, if you could, the blue bubble is from Ms. Reed, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Green bubble being from Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, again, read from this first page as far as date, time, who is speaking, and what is said.
At 9:49 a.m., Karen says, "You've really hurt me this time." 10:02 a.m., "I'm sorry. This is, sorry, it's kind of hard to read. I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy." At 10:09 a.m., Karen says, "I am not the same as everybody else. Most of the time, I try to do what is healthy/smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you and what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I'm falling apart and trying to get answers and help."
If I could stop you there, sir. If I could direct your attention
A little louder, please, sir.
to, my apologies. Sir, if I could direct you to page 5.
Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry, bottom of page 4.
All right.
And starting with the blue bubble on the bottom of page 4, again, if you could indicate as to who is speaking, what is said, and the date and time.
Karen says to John at 1:21 p.m. on the 28th, "Maybe you can call someone."
And if you could continue
Yep.
on and through page 5, sir.
On the 28th at 1:46 p.m., John says, "Like who?" And 1:47 p.m., "What time are you coming here?" And then there is, at 2:05, there's a message but no content.
And the next message at 2:06, sir.
Yes, 2:06 from Karen. "I don't know what time, feel kind of out of it, just trying to clear my head." 2:06 p.m., John writes back, "Okay." 2:06 p.m. again, Karen says, "Text me later when you guys settle in later." Text me when you guys settle in later. John says, "Sure," at 2:06 p.m. again. Karen says at 2:16, "I feel pretty shitty about this, I feel pretty shitty about how this morning went down. I know you said sorry, but it really stung, especially when I've been trying pretty hard lately. I feel like a loser turning around, just coming back over after everything you said."
If I could ask you to continue on to page 7, sir.
Okay. At 2:17 p.m., John says, "Not sure what else you want me to do. I said I'm sorry and I was out of line. If you prefer to stay home, I totally get it." Karen replies back at 2:17, "Things in my own life have been difficult too, you know." John writes back at 2:17, "I know." At 2:25 p.m., "Tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this." From Karen.
If you could continue on to page 8, sir.
At 2:25, John responds back, "Nope. Things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that?" That was at 2:26. At 2:29, he writes, "Kids are here, not in the mood to talk."
And how does the defendant respond to that at the bottom of page 8?
"So you're not into it anymore. That's fine, but I don't want to keep trying, and you keep treating me like this." At 2:29 p.m.
If I could direct you to the next page 9.
Yep. Ms. Reed says, "I'm trying to hug and kiss you this morning, and you whack me in the face with a pillow." At 2:29. At 2:30, she says, "Last night you're basically like, yeah, what about? When we talk about the future, so why don't you just admit you're not into it so much anymore?" At 2:30, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I said 2:30, John says, "Not how it went down, but okay."
And how does Ms. Reed respond to that?
"Can you please admit your head is out of the game with us?"
And if you could, sir, please continue on to the top of page 10.
Okay. At 2:32 p.m., "Sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now. So yeah, I'm not as quick to jump back into being lovey-dovey as you apparently." From John. And then John again at 2:32, "Oh my God, stop calling."
I could stop you there for just
Okay.
a moment, sir. With regard to January 28th, you also able to extract a report specifically in regard to calls received by Mr. O'Keefe on that date?
Yes, I was.
I mean, on that date into the next date of January 29th?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Here we go. Sabrina showing him a document. Asking him to review that up when you finish.
Okay.
You recognize that, sir?
Yes, it's John O'Keefe's call log.
And that's the entirety of the call log from January 28th into 29th, is that correct?
Yes, from 20th at 9:19 a.m. to the 29th at 6:03 a.m.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce the minutes of the next exhibit. No objection.
Okay.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Marino showing you another document. Just ask you to review that, look up when you're finished.
Okay.
Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, this is Karen Reed's call log from January 29th at 12:33 a.m. to January 29th at 6:03 a.m.
And those are specifically calls between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce in a minute as the next exhibit. No objection.
Thank you.
Now, Trooper Guarino, from the text messages that you were just testifying from, Mr. O'Keefe indicates OMG stopped calling at 2:32 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, from your review of those call logs, how many times did the defendant call Mr. O'Keefe on January 28th from approximately 9:19 a.m. to about 2:58 p.m.?
There's 18 calls from 9:19 to about 2:59 p.m.
Those calls are listed within those records as various as far as rejected, or missed, or answered, or things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
How many of them are rejected?
11.
How many of them are missed?
4.
And how many are answered?
3.
Now, following that text message at 2:32 p.m. from Mr. O'Keefe to the defendant, asking her to stop calling him, does the defendant keep calling?
Yes, she does.
And at some point, does Mr. O'Keefe call Ms. Reed back?
Yes, at about 3 p.m. on the 28th. Double check.
Thank you, sir. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino, I can take each of the call logs, but I want you to keep, hold on a second.
Okay.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention back to page 10 on the text messages with respect.
Okay, so, Mr. Lally, when you put your head down and when you walk away, we can't hear you. And so there won't be a record of this, so you have to keep your voice up.
I will do, Your My apologies.
Well, you just said, you just put your head down and your voice went down. So keep your voice up. It's really important you do so.
Trooper Guarino, turning your attention back to page 10 of these text messages, would read from Ms. Reed's response to Mr. O'Keefe at 2:32.
Yes, so 2:32 p.m., she says, why would you start with me this morning? And then followed up by 2:33, you're setting me up to fail.
If I could turn your attention to page 11 and ask you to continue from there.
Ms. Reed says, you start a number of fights from your end. John, and that's at 2:33. At 2:33, John writes back, I've explained it a few times already, not doing it again.
And how does the defendant respond to that?
So you're not into this anymore. And then John says, not into fighting all the time, correct. That's at 2:34 p.m.
And if I could turn your attention to the top of page 12.
Yes, 2:34, Ms. Reed says, if you tell me you're interested in someone else, you will never hear from me again. You can have all the space in the world. John writes back, but there's no content at 2:34. And then at 2:34, she says, then stop starting with me.
How does Mr. O'Keefe respond to that?
At 2:34, he writes back, I'm not answering, stop calling.
And if you could, if I could turn your attention to the top of page 13.
Ms. Reed says, can you please answer after how you treated me earlier? John responds back at 2:35, Kaylee is right here. Ms. Reed says, you're starting a rager with me out of nowhere, and then you tell me you're sick of fighting with me at 2:35. She writes at 2:38, I'm going to grab a drink in a bit.
If I could direct you to the top of page 14, sir.
She says, can you answer please at 2:38? He writes back at 2:39, no, Karen, not sure why you need to announce that you're going drinking, but have fun. Karen writes back at 2:40, seeing if you want to meet me later. Can you please call me right after that?
And again, if I could direct you to the top of page 15.
John writes back at 2:40, have to take him to the doctor, he has practice. Ms. Reed writes back, yeah, 5 minutes. John writes back at 2:43, my father just walked in. Aaron writes back, okay, can you please call me for 2 minutes at 2:44.
The top of page 16, sir.
2:44, John writes back, not right now. Karen writes back, I'm there when anyone else needs me at 2:44. 2:46, yes, John, you gave me utter grief this morning. I'd like you to call me for a minutes.
And the last one from that page, sir.
Yeah. 2:47, I've been trying to get over the hump with is arguing, and now you tell me you're not into things. And if you don't want to fight weekly, but fly off the handle at 8 a.m. with me, like you're setting me up to fail.
Sir, if I could draw your attention to page 42.
Okay.
And sir, if I could ask you to start reading from the top of page 42.
Yep. At 7:41 p.m., Karen writes, okay, let me know if you end up leaving. John writes back at 7:42, why, now you're not coming? Karen writes back, I'm waiting for the plumber. Actually think he's in the driveway, 7:42. John says 7:43, we're taking Mike's car, so I'm relying on you for a ride home if he leaves. Karen writes back at 7:43, he's not going home after. John writes back at 7:43, 8 on a Friday. He may have to get Michael. And you have a plumber coming over at 8. Knowing me and Papa could have handled it. Good luck. And that was at 7:44.
Thank you, sir. If I could direct your attention to page 49.
Okay.
If I could ask you to start from the page 49, sir.
8:29 p.m. Yeah, but he lives right down the road. John writes back at 8:30. Karen, this storm is going to be intense. Can't drive. 8:30. She writes back, okay, well, if he can't, he can't. John writes back, I'll do it Monday. Karen responds at 8:31. Ha, I better not still have this problem on Monday. John writes back, plan on being there. Karen writes back at 8:32, I'd like to know, I could take a hot shower here if I need to. John writes back, figured you'd be in Canton till Monday.
If I could direct you to the top of the next page, 51.
John, I'm getting off my phone. Let me know what you're doing. Karen writes back at 8:33, I think the four of us together is toxic to this relationship. Would like to limit it. And then says, you've said so yourself for probably a year now. And John writes back at 8:33, blizzard tomorrow, nobody is going anywhere.
Sir, if I could direct you to the top of page 52.
Okay. Karen says, maybe I'll come back late tonight. Bad snow is in the early AM. That's at 8:35. And again, 8:35. I'll head up there in a few minutes. Let me know if you leave. John replies back, sure. And then the next one's not until 12:55 AM on the 29th. I'm going home.
And the I'm going home is from the defendant, 12:55 a.m., is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And if I could direct your attention to the top of page 53.
Yes, 12:55 again. See you later. At 1:02, your kids are cucking alone. 1:29, 1:04 a.m. I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, may I approach to retrieve?
Yes. Can I see counsel at sidebar about scheduling?
You are
with this witness, but can we go until 4:15? I know it's been a long day, but does that work for you all? All right, thank you very much. So why don't we do that, and then I'll talk to you about scheduling after.
you are unmuted.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
May I approach this to retrieve?
Yes.
Now, Trooper Garino, you were also able to get some chats as well as some phone calls between the defendant and certain individuals, is that correct?
Yes.
And may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I'm showing you two documents, you said to review those. Finish.
Okay. Okay.
And do you recognize those, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
The single page is Karen Reed to Laura Sullivan phone calls, or I should say, yep. calls from Laura Sullivan to Karen Reed. And the other one is Karen Reed and Laura Sullivan's chat messages.
What's contained in those documents, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you were able to extract from the defendant's phone?
Yes, sir.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce the minutes and next exhibits.
No objection.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
On your document, sir, you recognize that?
Yes, these are Karen Reed and Erin O'Keefe phone call.
And what is contained in that, is that fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed conducting the extraction of the defendant's phone with regard to the communications with Erin O'Keefe?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I want to seek to introduce the minutes and next exhibit.
Okay. There's no objection, Ms. Giannetti, right?
No objection.
May I-
6:32.
I'm very sorry,
you.
Madam Court Reporter. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's previously been marked as exhibits 51 and 52. Ask if you recognize those.
Yes, these are phone calls between Karen Reed and Katie Camerano. And 52 is chats between Karen Reed and Katie Camerano.
May I approach this to retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
What's contained in those exhibits 51 and 52, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed during the extraction of the material from the defendant's phone?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, showing you what's marked as exhibits 94 and then 95.
Yes. Sorry. They are chats between Karen Reed and Jen McCabe, text messages. And 95 is Karen Reed and Jen McCabe phone calls.
And again, what's contained in those records before you, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed in the defendant's phone during the course of your extraction of materials from her phone?
Yes.
May I approach the retrieve, Your Honor?
Yes.
So these are already in evidence, Mr. Lally, so that you don't need the fair and accurate depiction.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Juris, you know what? I'm going to send you home. Okay? So I need to see counsel at sidebar for just a minute to figure out the next 2 days.
You are muted.
So, Juris, we will
You
be
are
in session
unmuted.
tomorrow, but you won't be. All right? So it's very important that you don't watch TV or listen to anything, or read about anything. So we will be here tomorrow. Wednesday is the federal holiday, so we're not in session. I know there's supposed to be some big heat wave this week. I really appreciate that everybody dresses respectfully for court. I suggest you come in comfortably. It's an old building, the air conditioning's been great today. I don't know that that will hold up when really pushed. So feel free to dress comfortably. We'll plan on seeing you on Thursday. If that changes, the court officers have your contact information. But we're planning on seeing you on Thursday. All right, so please, those 3 cautions: do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it. Let us know. We'll see you Thursday night.
All rise for the court, please. Follow me.
All right, and Trooper, you can just follow out behind them, okay?